Dude, have you, with regards to timescales, are you, we've talked about this before in the past of how things have got shortened a lot over the last, I don't know, it feels like 5 minutes, but I guess it's been a gradual process. Have you noticed that happening consciously over the last, well, you said you've been in the business for 10 years now.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a tendency for deadlines to get shorter, and again, this is kind of part of how I think design world has evolved from when I first started in the industry. Is that I feel there were definitely a lot more distinctions between designers, CAS modelers, clay modelers, whereas now, and the way the software has been developed, designers can pick up Alias and use Sub D, and they can chuck in a shape in 3D in a day, and then have 10 different iterations of that design if they want to. And I think a lot of studios are being pushed to do more 3D work earlier on than the traditional ideation in sketches and then take it to CAD. So I think all of these things are like compounded deadlines just get shorter. And this is just what I feel. Once the upper management kind of see that you can do it in that amount of time, they're like, oh, you can do it in that time. Can you, we need it like a week quicker or a few days quicker or whatever. And then that gets achieved, and then it just gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And I mean, it's great in some respects, the fact that we're able to get higher quality products sooner, but it does create, I feel, a lot of angst amongst the team. It puts a lot of pressure on the teams.
But you use the term high quality. I mean, would you not say that the quality suffers because of that?
In some respects, but I think the fact that designers are able to, or they're being pushed to work in 3D quicker, allows some of those trickier corners, trickier areas to be worked out much earlier on. And so, whilst the quality suffers at some level, there are areas where the clay guys, if they've got a milled model, or the CAS guys, can actually concentrate on dialing up the quality quicker rather than spending time working out a corner that hasn't been thought about in 3D before that point.
Henry, I wanted to go back to when you were a young kid growing up in the Southeast. How did you come to the grand realization of wanting to study car design?
I think I was maybe 10 or 12. So I kind of had a weird route to the realization, because I grew up in the countryside, and everyone who knows me knows that I've got a massive geeky fascination with diggers and tractors and all that sort of stuff. And then I think I got to an age where I got in that, randomly transitioned into F1. And then I remember having a chat with my brother about cars and, just reading Top Gear and all that sort of stuff. And then I kind of got thinking that it'd be really cool to work on cars as a living. And I found out that you could do car design as a career. I think I was about 10 or 11, something like that. And so it was my school design tech teacher that told me you could do car design, and that Coventry, of all places, Coventry was, a really good place to do it. I think when he was younger, it was certainly like the bee's knees, it was the halo place to do car design. So from that point onward, I kind of headed my school journey into getting to that point to do car design. And I just used to sit and draw cars, like everyone, drawing cars in the math book and not paying attention and all this sort of stuff. And that kind of just evolved over time. And then GCSE decided on the subject which I thought would best suit moving forward to car design. And at that point, I didn't really know about car design in America. It was very much the UK and Europe. So I chose to do French and German as well, thinking that, it'd be really cool to go work at somewhere like Mercedes or Porsche or, Renault, somewhere like that. And so that's what I ended up doing, was design, tech, French and German for my A-levels. And I've never worked in Europe.
I was going to ask you about that because it says on your profile that you can speak French and German. What are your skills like?
They're okay. I mean, I grew up in Brussels, so that's where I kind of learned French. But languages are kind of similar to sketching. If you're not using them all the time, you get a bit rusty. But depending on how many beers I've had, depends on the level of my
confidence.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I can converse in French and pidgin German probably.
Wow, that's pretty cool. What, dude, I wanted to know, like, what, if any, would you consider, like, would you consider to have experienced any particular failures in your career? And what did you learn from those?
That's a good question. I guess in some ways when I switched, early on from being a designer to a CAS modeler, like I said earlier, it just happened. It wasn't a conscious choice. I guess there was a point then when I felt that I'd failed as a designer.
Did you feel that?
Yeah.
Did you feel like, fuck, I've failed?
Yeah, but in all honesty, I think it was probably the realization that I was never going to be that shit hot designer. So it was kind of, I guess, a combination of feeling that I'd failed as a designer, and after I got over that, I kind of realized that you can still design as a digital modeler because, there are areas, like I said, there are areas that sometimes aren't thought about in 3D. And so you're in that sort of position where you can suggest or influence the way a certain part of a car or product looks, just by being able to model it. And so it took me a while to realize that, but I think it is a team effort. It's not just the guys that can hold a big biro and do a shit hot rendering. It takes a whole cohort of people with different talents and different skill sets to get to that end product. So I think I kind of got over that feeling of failing reasonably quick when I realized that I could still have a discussion with the designer. It's not just, this is how it's going to be. It's like, well, have you thought about this and the ramifications you doing this will have on like the next part along or something like that. So I think it's important to understand that even though you're not the quarterback, you can still have a pretty big influence on what happens on a specific project or in a company even. I'm trying to think if there are any other failings that I could. I mean, there were plenty at McLaren. There's a few things which I definitely thought I fucked up big time, and then kind of realized that sometimes your fuck ups aren't important because there's a bigger picture, and yeah, I think you've just got to, like you said, you've got to try and learn from it and talk to people when you think you fucked up, or if you fucked up, or if people tell you fucked up, then it's important to have a discussion about it and say, what did I do wrong? How can I improve it the next time, or how can we fix it? So just communication, basically, if you in that situation.
Henry, with regards to you having, like, if we talk about the realization that you had, like, okay, I'm not going to be the quarterback. Do you think that you could have benefited from having that realization early on, like in university, for example?
Yeah, I've had several instances in my career where I feel that if I'd known about 3D modeling or even clay modeling, digital or clay, if I'd known about that earlier, part of me does think I could have just done an art foundation and then specialized into that. But at the same time, I kind of think that the journey I've been on and the university experience and meeting people and that sort of peer-to-peer learning was super important. I just think there could have been a different route had I thought about it or known about it sooner.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it for sure. I think, like, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Sweden, for example, they've got it's like a Technicon, and they have this 2-year course, and at the end of it, you are a pretty fucking good modeler because you're focusing just on Alias modeling. And there's obviously pros and cons to that, but I think how I think about it is, like, if I personally had that realization at university, I could have really fucking doubled down on Alias or possibly even looking at rendering or other stuff like that, instead of, like, putting all this energy into something that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. I know the university, the courses you're talking about. The one thing I'm not sure about, and maybe someone else does, is if they still teach you about all the engineering and all the boring stuff, which you think is a complete waste of time when you're there, but actually, it does help later down the line to an extent, and just to be able to sort of get your foot in the door, or just be able to be part of the conversation. But again, you learn most of it when you're at a company, and every company does things slightly differently, has different terminologies. Land Rover is different to McLaren and all that sort of stuff. But that's one thing I would say that I'm quite thankful for from my time, was just the little snippets of all the different, ergonomics and engineering and all that sort of stuff. I think it helped me further down the line to be able to have those conversations with designers and engineers with a bit more confidence.
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that, had one known that you were going to become an Alias modeler, that you could have fucked university off completely. I interviewed, really early on when we started this podcast, I interviewed my former boss, who ironically also went to Coventry, but like fucking 20 years before us. And he had this kind of epiphany I think it was in the second year, that he's never going to be this guy that's going to churn out ideas all day long with these beautiful sketches, and so he kind of doubled down on the whole Alias thing, even though it was, digital modeling was really in its infancy, but it allowed him to kind of solidify his position as the fucking guy to go to, and really focus and hone that skill. But I think it sounds like you had already clocked that anyway. Like you were probably one of those guys in your year, right?
Yeah, I think there was a few of us that were more into the CAD side of things, and they've all gone on to be shit hot CAD guys. I mean, I remember, a few of them got offered jobs as digital modelers like day one out of university. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So.
What was Reese? Reese was in your year, right?
Reese is in my year. Yeah, Reese is. He was really good at Alias. He was good at everything. But yeah, Reese, Finney, Adam Cunningham, Frank Kowecki, Adrian Barron. They were all, they were probably like the super shit hot Alias modelers in my year. So.
Wow. Dude, who, over the course of the last 10 years, who have been the people that have been most influential to you?
I would definitely say that most of them are from my time at McLaren. Paul Howes, obviously you've spoken to him. You can understand why he's on that list. But honestly, like the whole team there, for various different reasons, have become some of my probably like closest friends and advisors over the last sort of 10 years. Even my boss there. I say boss, my first boss, Mark Roberts. I still message him. Paul Howes, Nick McKinley, Dan. So there's more people than I can name. Esteban is someone who. All of these people are people that when I'm, thinking about doing something, or if I have questions or want advice or just a sounding board, they're all the kind of people that I'll go to first. That aren't my brothers. My brothers are kind of, I guess, the out of industry people that I talk to. But and there's loads of people who I haven't mentioned, but certainly the sort of the people that I was at McLaren with, certainly some of the people that I will go to with a lot of things, and have steered certain decisions that I've made in the past, and have sort of influenced stuff that I've done. So,
Henry, what is the biggest myth about your job that you would like to debunk?
There's no such thing as just. It's one of my least favorite sentences when a designer.
Can you just change the body size?
Can you just move this like 5 mil, and you end up having to chase that all the way around the car? There's no real thing as can you just, unfortunately. And I think a lot of my friends not in industry basically think that I just do dot to dot all day, because that's basically what Alias looks like. They obviously do all the normal jokes of colouring between the lines and all that sort of stuff. But I think outside of industry, there's a myth that designing is probably one of the easier things you can do in life. But getting a car from a piece of paper onto the road, it's quite a challenge, and it takes a lot of people. But yeah, I guess those are the kind of the biggest myths, that there's no such thing as just, and I don't do dot to dot. I always give them shit back and saying like, it's not like geography. And sorry to any geographers out there, it's not like geography where you just colour in the countries. You actually have to make the outline of the countries first before you can colour them in. So.
But Henry, I've another question before we close. Like, what do you think? Do you think Alias is going to be the go-to tool forever?
I don't know, because there's a lot of softwares that are kind of snapping at its heels, and I think with this new sub D thing, that's kind of, the more that evolves, that's going to maybe keep them up there. But I don't know that there'll be. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that are out there, but I know there are some that are just sort of coming out they've come out in the last few years, and the results they produce are just, amazing. And, like even the rendering stuff, I think there's more competition in the rendering side of things, maybe than the modeling side of things, and, Unreal Engine and things like that, really, really impressive, and people pick it up really, really quick. I've heard of people learning this in like a month, and then they're, absolute whiz kids. So, yeah, I think it's exciting time to kind of be learning all of these things, because it's definitely easier, and there's more material to be able to learn how to do it than there was when I was at university, when you were at university, where, like I said, you just get taught how to do a square and then run with it. So.
What piece of advice would you give somebody wanting to become a modeler, a digital modeler?
Don't be afraid to try, the tools in whatever software you're going to use or you're using at the time. I think one thing I've learned is there's multiple ways to achieve the same result. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. And just keep trying to learn, keep talking to peers or people message people on Instagram about sketches. So, do the same with modeling. Watch YouTube videos. Just try and come up with your own designs. That's one way I actually found I learned Alias much quicker, coming up with my own design than following like a blueprint. I think that was the task at uni, was to follow a blueprint, and I just couldn't get my head around it at the time. And whilst you'll be able to fudge a few things by doing your own design, I think there's something to be said for seeing a finished thing quicker, because it will give you a bit more confidence the next time you do something, or the next time you try to build something from a blueprint. But just don't be afraid to fuck it up, because you'll fuck it up the whole time. So I still fuck up now.